welcome back to Straight to the Point. I am Greg Jackson, self-proclaimed attorney extraordinaire, a co-host on the weekly radio talk show program, Let's Talk About It, and of course, a general in the Let's Talk Nation. Hey, listen, as always, this channel is about educating, entertaining, and empowering viewers like you by addressing commonly asked legal questions. But from time to time, I also address some issues that deal with the legal profession that folks ask about that a lot of times we don't get answers on. And today is one of those questions as I discuss some of the top verdicts that have ever taken place in the United States. Now, you're going to be surprised and possibly shocked by some of these verdicts because when we talk about these verdicts, they are astonishing. So how is it that I landed on this topic today? Well, I was having some conversations with some clients and they were asking, what does $1 million case look like? And I was able to tell them, listen, if you have these types of injuries, these types of expenses, if you have pain and suffering, and if there's coverage to cover those injuries, this is how you get to $1 million case. And then they asked the question, well, what about these $1 billion verdicts that we hear about? So I wanted to just talk about what $1 billion case looks like. But the other thing I also told my clients is that as a healthy individual, you do not want $1 million case, and you most certainly do not want $1 billion case, because it's not worth living your life or losing a loved one to recover these extreme amounts of money. First case we're going to talk about today is from the state of Texas. And this is a very, very sad case. Again, this is one of the cases that no matter what, you never want to get a verdict like this because of what was lost in this particular case. And in this case, a teenager, a very disturbed young man, sexually assaulted an 8-year-old boy. After he did that, he doused him with gasoline, set him on fire. And this young kid, this young boy, sustained permanent injuries, which was 99% of his body being burned. Thereafter, he died of cancer, which the doctors indicated were a result of his injuries, the burn injuries that he sustained from this unfortunate attack. Well, the family of the young boy who died took this teenager to court, and a jury awarded the family $150 billion. That's right, $150 billion was awarded to the family that was to come from this young teenage boy. So obviously, this is was more so a verdict that was symbolic to indicate the devastating nature, the menacing nature of the acts of this young man, because obviously most companies don't have $100 billion to pay a verdict. So we know that this young man, this teenager, this monster would not have the money. But that is our first case, the $150 billion case for a young boy who was burnt and died as a result of those injuries. The next verdict up for discussion is probably one that you all remember or are familiar with from the early 2000s. The large cigarette manufacturers and some of the smaller cigarette manufacturers, such as Philip Morris, R.J. Reynolds, they were sued because of the harmful effects of cigarette smoking to consumers. This particular verdict found that there was a conspiracy or fraud, that the cigarette industry convinced young people and other people to smoke. They became addicted to smoking, and this caused lung cancer and other types of illnesses. And the jury for this class action lawsuit brought back a verdict of $144.8 billion. That makes that verdict the second largest verdict in the history of verdicts here in the U.S. That verdict was also made up primarily of punitive damages, which is a way that companies, corporations, individuals are punished for doing something that is willful, reckless, or wanton in nature, meaning that they intended to do it or that they should have known that those actions were going to be detrimental to the general public. This is one of those things where they say that a company put profit over people. And because of that, again, the cigarette industry, the big players, the smaller manufacturers of cigarettes, they were hit with the verdict of $144.8 billion. The third case on the list, or the third largest verdict on the list, keeps us in the cigarette smoking arena. And in this particular case in California, an individual who was a lifelong smoker actually sued R.J. Reynolds because she was diagnosed with lung cancer. As a result of that, the jury awarded this lady $28 billion. That's right, a lifelong smoker who probably knew about the effects of smoking by that time, because in the 70s and 80s, there were most certainly warnings on cigarette cartons and things of that nature, warning that if you smoke, you can develop these disease processes. But in California, those warnings were not taken into account, or maybe they were taken into account. But in any event, this individual was awarded $28 billion, which makes that the third largest verdict in the history of large verdicts in the United States. The next verdict on the list actually keeps us in the state of California, and it involves an auto defect case. In this particular case, there were 6 individuals in a GM vehicle, and that vehicle was involved in a motor vehicle crash. When the vehicle collided with another vehicle, or whatever it was that it collided with, it exploded, and it caused those 6 individuals to suffer permanent disfiguring injuries. In that case, the jury awarded those 6 individuals $107.6 million in compensatory damages, but punitive damages, and remember, we just talked about punitive damages, it awarded them over $4.7 billion, making this a $4.9 billion verdict on this automobile defect case. So that makes it the 4th largest verdict in the history of large verdicts in the United States. The last verdict on the list takes us to Missouri, the show me state. In this particular case, there was a class action lawsuit by 22 women who, after decades of using a Johnson & Johnson talcum-based powder, found that they had ovarian cancer. Now, it was later found and determined that the talcum powder was asbestos-laden, and that this was the cause of the ovarian cancer that was diagnosed in these ladies. The jury in that particular case awarded a compensatory damage of $550 million. But in punitive damage, they awarded $4.14 billion, which left this as a verdict of $4.69 billion, the 5th largest verdict of all times in U.S. history. I hope that you enjoyed this segment today, and if so, and if you found it to be beneficial, and if you would like to see more videos like this in the future, please hit that like and subscribe button. Once again, I am Greg Jackson, self-proclaimed attorney extraordinaire, a co-host of the weekly radio talk show program, Let's Talk About It, and the general in the Let's Talk Nation. Until next time, be good.